Welcome everyone to this Zoom event. I'm Nurjahan Aziz, publisher at Mawenzi House Publishers, based here in Toronto. We are proud to have published Munira Premji's book, Choosing Hope, One Woman, Three Cancers. Tonight, Munira will be in conversation with Canadian actor and TV personality, Hus Madhavji. First, some acknowledgements are in order. We respectfully acknowledge the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Innu, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Our publishing program is supported by Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Government of Canada. We are grateful to all of them for their generosity. Tonight's launch event is part of the Toronto Lit Up program, which is designed to spotlight new works and empower Toronto's writers. Toronto Lit Up is funded by the Toronto Arts Council and spearheaded by Toronto International Festival of Authors. A few words about Mawenzi House Publishers. Starting with an initiative that began in 1981, Mawenzi House is dedicated to bringing to the reading public fresh new writing, poetry, fiction, memoirs, young adult, and literary and social commentary from Canada and across the world that reflects the diversity of our rapidly globalizing world. Our focus is on works that can loosely be termed multicultural, for want of a better word. Our authors come from South Asian, East Asian, African, Caribbean, and Near Eastern backgrounds. Check out our website, www.mawenzihouse.com, for our recent and full backlist. And then a word about the Zoom event. Everyone in the audience is muted. Please write any comments you may have in the chat. The speaker view is the best to see who is speaking. And now to introduce our moderator and host for the next segment, Hus Madhavji. Hus Madhavji is a Canadian actor in film and television. He appeared on ABC's Combat Hospital and had a 4-season run on HBO Canada's comedy Call Me Fitz. He is best known for his role in CTV's hit drama called Saving Hope, where he took on the challenging part of Dr. Shahir Hamza, a brilliant neurosurgeon with Asperger's syndrome. We are very happy to have him moderate tonight's event. Welcome, Hus.
Thank you, Nurjan. Thank you very much for that bio. I appreciate this, and I want to say thank you. This is like an absolute privilege and honor to be moderating this. I'm a friend and fan of Munira and her book, Choosing Hope. So I want to welcome everybody to the virtual launch of Choosing Hope, One Woman, Three Cancers. And I'm so excited to get into this and to talk about this and to have all of you read this if you haven't already, because it is remarkable. I'll just reiterate some of the things that Nurjahan has said. First of all, Mawenzi House, this entire thing is organized by them. The Mawenzi House Publishers and Toronto Lit Up, an organization funded by the Toronto Arts Council designed to spotlight Toronto writers. This event was originally supposed to take place live at the Princess Margaret Hospital, but then of course COVID hit and several live events for the book got canceled. So here we are, but this is wonderful. This to me is much more intimate. We're able to connect. I feel like I'm like looking at Nurjan, I'm looking at you right in the face. This is us, like right beside you here. So this is, and I feel much more relaxed here. And I think this is a wonderful setting to launch this book. My name is Hus Madhavji, and I'm very excited. And I'm going to tell you what the plan is. This is going to be the move. Munira is here, and she'll read excerpts from the book. We'll then interview her. If you have questions for her, please put them in the chat. We're going to try and get to as many questions as possible. And there's also a giveaway. So what you have to do is mention today's book launch on your social media page. So if you go onto Facebook or Twitter, her handle is Premji Munira. That's right, yes. And then on Instagram, it's Munira Premji. So Premji Munira on Facebook and Twitter, and Munira Premji on Instagram. Just mention the book launch, tag Munira, and she has a beautiful framed poster, a really cool Choosing Hope bookmark with a tassel, and this other thing I think is the most prized thing, a personalized note by Munira. And for those of you who know Munira and have followed her journey and have followed her blogs and had a chance to read this book or even had a conversation with her, you know that any words that come from her are always from the heart and always magical. So I think it's worth it. So 3 people will be lucky enough to get that prize. Without further ado, let's get started.
My name is Munira Premji. I was born in Moshi, Tanzania, at the foot of Kilimanjaro. In 1979, I immigrated to Canada and made Toronto my home. I met Naguib at university and we got married. A few years later, we welcomed our children, Shane and Sabrina, into our lives. Over the years, we raised our family, enjoyed our careers, and built roots in our community. Then, in 2012, our lives took an unexpected turn. After being healthy for all of my life, I was diagnosed with 3 advanced cancers, all within a 5-year period. After the initial denial, grief, rage, and terror, I made the decision to accept the cancers and to find a way to not just survive, but thrive through the challenges. I chose hope. It wasn't always easy. There were times when I needed help to get out of bed, to climb stairs, to take a bath. Those were tough days. But choosing hope and holding on to it every day, even when tired or uncertain or making difficult decisions, enabled me to move forward and find strength. I have learned that hope is an attitude, a promise, a way of life. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can control how you choose to respond. When you choose hope, anything is possible.
That was great. Are we back on? I think we're back on. That's a wonderful way to intro this. And please welcome the author of Choosing Hope, One Woman, 3 Cancers, Munira Premji.
Thank you. I just really wanted to start by saying that I'm just so beyond delighted that you have all taken the time to be part of today's event. My heart feels really, really, really full. And let's make this happen, Hus. Let's make this happen.
Well, before we, because I have so much to talk to you about, and I'll just out the gate. I love this. I love this book. But if you would be so kind to please share with us a few pages from the book, and then I'd love to get to some Q&A with you, if you don't mind. Thank you.
All right, just to give you some context around this book, this particular chapter, it's called Losses, Endings, and New Beginnings. And this was a particularly difficult chapter to write because when you go through cancer, it's not just the physical aspect, but it's also, you know, the part about figuring out who you are and who you become after you've gone through so many losses. It really is about identity. Losses, Endings, and New Beginnings, April 6th, 2012. Before being diagnosed with cancer, I rarely thought about death. I knew on a rational level that one day we all die. But this was a faraway notion that was not on my radar. There is nothing like cancer to force you to get eyeball to eyeball with the cold grip of mortality, even if the timelines are uncertain. Today is not a good day for me. I am beginning to see myself as nothing more than a perishable mass with a limited shelf life, costing the system thousands of dollars. Yes, I am Munira, I am me, but who am I? What have I become? Dealing with cancer is not just about managing the physical aspects of the disease. It is equally about figuring out who you are through the process. It comes down to identity. Prior to the cancers, I was very clear about who I was, what was important to me, my beliefs, my values, how I showed up in the world. Now my identity is threatened, and I'm sitting in this uncomfortable space wondering how to operate. I feel like I'm losing myself. I feel a loss of purpose in not being able to work. I love my work as a human resources practitioner and normally would jump out of bed to start the day with enthusiasm and energy. I didn't realize how difficult it would be not to have a place to go to every morning for 8 or 9 hours. That is probably the hardest loss for me today. Is it a temporary loss? I don't know. More and more, I see myself as a cancer patient, a number, a victim. It's easy to feel this way when you're no longer able to do the things you normally do easily. Chemotherapy is tough on my system and I have become physically dependent. I need help to walk. I need help to climb stairs. I need help to take a bath. It is quite debilitating. I can't remember things like names or where I left my keys. Mentally, I am exhausted. Yesterday, I called somebody and when they picked up the phone, I could not remember who it was that I was calling. What's happening to me? I've lost my financial independence. I worked as an independent consultant and relied on contract work to earn a living. Now suddenly I'm not earning and must go on disability assistance. This has been a shock to my system and my pride has taken a hit. Pre-cancer, I would identify 5 charities that I would support each year because giving to vulnerable people was part of what I did. Now I am one of the vulnerable ones. I think long and hard before I buy another dress or book. I have started shopping at the dollar stores for household items. When friends call me about lunch, I make excuses because I can no longer afford lunch dates and offer to meet them for a coffee instead. I'm making choices of economy, like taking the 401 rather than the 407 toll road for trips, or taking the bus and subway to get to Princess Margaret Hospital rather than driving and paying $25 for parking. The worst part is the guilt of not contributing to the household in the way I did in the past. And sometimes asking my husband for money. It is humbling. I seem to have lost my former self-confidence and self-esteem. I don't feel capable. I feel less than, inadequate and inferior. I am tentative. I keep second guessing myself. I have noticed that I'm keeping my head down because I do not feel whole. And while I have such wonderful support around me, I feel isolated, small, and insignificant. I keep telling myself that this condition is temporary. Given time, I will reclaim my mojo. I am counting on this. I have felt the different stages of grief for myself, grief and denial as I lament the loss of the familiar, anger and guilt as though I had caused the cancer, and depression because my life will never be the same again. I keep asking myself, how am I supposed to behave as a cancer patient? I'm looking for a playbook that tells me that this is the face of the poster child of cancer, but I can't find anything. This is an individual journey. Part of me wants to have nothing to do with it, to deny its existence, to scream for someone to make my body normal again. Another part of me wants to battle this beast. Moment by moment, I vacillate between feeling sorry for myself, getting sad and angry, and bracing myself for the long journey ahead. It took me 2 months of introspection before I found my answer. And the answer was to surrender to God's will. Rather than controlling and forcing life to unfold as I wanted it to, I needed to accept with grace what has happened to me. This acceptance came slowly as I sorted out my feelings, talked to others, learned more about the cancer, and figured out what was in my control. From this place of submission, I am reshaping my identity, keeping the important parts intact and exploring who I will become during this time. I'm not only going to tolerate my condition, I am going to embrace it. I'm not going to wait the cancers out. I am going to live. It's weird and counterintuitive, but cancer is giving me a new beginning.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. Why did you share that? It's such a hard chapter to share. There's like, that is a tough chapter that you just read, and I thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing those pages with us. Okay, let's talk about the book. Why this title, Choosing Hope? I mean, it's like like even when I read the subtitle, One Woman, Three Cancers, that is like a very, that in itself is a very difficult thing to understand and comprehend. But why Choosing Hope?
I love this question, Hus, because the working title for this book for the longest time was The Cancer Warrior.
Okay.
And I loved that title, and it resonated with my personality. And every time I think about the cancer warrior, I get into the warrior pose, you know, the yoga warrior pose.
Yes, I know that pose. Yeah.
And then I started to reflect because, you know, the cancer warrior meant that the hospital and the treatments were my battleground. And the image was one of fighting. And somewhere along the way, I had this major reframe. And I started to think about this as a journey of faith and a journey of hope. And there was a nurse that used to treat me, and he was my most favorite nurse of all. His name was Manny Martinez, and he worked in the chemo department. Manny, I talk about him in the book.
You talk about him in the book. Yes, you do. Yeah.
One day when I went for chemo, I was having a particularly bad day and I had really lost all hope. And I remember on that day, I specifically requested the reception desk. I said, is it possible for me to have Manny today as my nurse? And is it also possible for me to have a bed for chemo? Because honestly, I am so tired. I just felt really yucky. I was not feeling very positive at all. And I didn't get a bed, but I got Manny. And he came and opened his arms like this, you know, and he gave me a really big hug. And on that day, it was crazy, but he gave me a bracelet as a gift. And I wear this bracelet like every day. And the bracelet says, you know, once you choose hope, anything is possible.
Right.
And so, you know, that suddenly started to make sense. And the more I played with those words, the more it made sense. And so choosing hope is what it became.
That's what did it.
But I wanted to say also, Hus, that, you know, you can write a book called Choosing Hope, but you need someone to have faith in this book. And that's where Mawenzi House has come in. You know, they took a chance on me as a first-time author. They trusted enough that there was a story here to be told. And so, yeah, the book you hold is very much a culmination of all of that.
So there's a couple of things I want to, and that I want to stem from that. But I think, I mean, first of all, just looking at the amount of people that are logging on and are joining us, welcome everybody. I know that Munira, before even writing the book and throughout your journey, you know, like even on Facebook, I'll be following I Will Survive, and you know, jumping on the blog, and you developed a following there. Why then transition to the book? Like what was it about, like wanting to actually have a physical copy of this? Like why do an actual, why this? What was that decision?
You know, I never really set out to write a book. That was really not part of the plan. So when I was diagnosed in 2012, my situation was pretty dire, and I wasn't doing very well. And so family members and friends would call all the time to find out how I was doing. And our telephone was just ringing all the time. And it was exhausting, repeating the same story over and over and over again. So my daughter, Sabrina, who also happens to be my bestest friend in the whole wide expanding universe. So Sabrina says to me, you know, why don't you like start writing a blog? And we can send this blog to family and a few, you know, of your friends so that, you know, they know what's going on with you. So that was kind of the plan. But next thing I know, the blog just grew and grew and grew, and it kind of got viral. And, you know, before I knew it, there were like 200,000 hits on that blog. And there were people from some 40 countries that were following. And a lot of these readers, you know, I started to build a relationship with them, and they kept saying, you got to write a book, you got to write a book. And I thought, yeah, I got to write a book. And so that's really how
You're like, I'm doing it. I'm doing the book.
I'm doing it.
Well, here's the thing about, I mean, first of all, I mean, just even your personality, like I've known you for a long time now, you're very charming, and you are a warrior. It's true. Like you, but you're very like, it's not like there's like a smile. There's always like you've got this innate charm in you, and it comes out in this book. And this is my experience with this book. And so I would like to talk to you about this, because I felt there are some very dark moments in this book for sure that, you know, are sad, and you start welling up, and you start having these like emotions, but then you throw in like a joke, or there's some like funny thing, or like that makes me then like, why am I laughing and why am I welling up at the same time? Like and it's like it's wonderful the way it is. I just think that's naturally how you are, and it's sort of it comes out viscerally in the book. And you mentioned it even in this example with Manny, which is, I wanted a bed, but I wanted Manny. I didn't get to bed, but I got Manny. And it's like these little wins. Can you talk to me about the journey that you've had over the past like 8 years, and celebrating the small wins? Because I feel like that is one of the recurring themes throughout the entire book is the importance of celebrating small wins.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing you said was, you found all these funny moments and it got you
Yeah,
laughing. And I have to say, who said, we're not a funny family. Like,
you're
I'm not
very funny.
funny,
No, you're very funny.
and Sabrina is not funny, and Shane,
She's
who
very funny.
writes, is not funny, and Nagib is absolutely not funny. But you're right. I suppose there are those those moments in the book, and you're right. It is about celebrating small wins. With the three cancers, being advanced cancers, having to go through more than a year's worth of chemo, during that time. I mean, those are really tough situations to be in, and it's easy to give up hope. And so my mantra became, one celebration at a time, one step at a time, one stair at a time. And so, yeah, it was always the small wins. And we used to celebrate the craziest things. We used to celebrate, when suddenly I was able to eat French fries because, I couldn't handle that. Or every time we would, have any kind of drink, a Tim Hortons coffee, whatever that drink was, we always celebrated by toasting to life. And it's funny, but as a family, we still do that. I mean, Nagib and I do that every day. Every time, even water, we'll kind of take that and toast to life. So it's
Oh,
about to life. And
too
so
much.
truly about appreciating every moment, because it makes it bearable and you feel like you're making some progress. It's about choosing hope.
But I think that is but that is a universal theme. Like I mean, in a weird way, it's a very specific story, a specific journey, but I connected to it in many ways because of these recurring themes that are innately in the book. One of the unique things I loved about the book were the different perspectives. So we have you have Nugget, your husband, we have your two kids, Shane and Sabrina. What was so important about that? About having everybody's perspective? I thought it was wonderful to see what it's like as a kid, what it's like as a partner, to be caregivers and to understand what that journey is like for them. Why was that so important to have that perspective?
That was really important to me, and it was a non-negotiable. And the reason for that is I think there's just so many books out there, cancer books, and you hear about the journey. But what I learned over this time is that it's not just your journey. Your family is going through this journey with you.
Mhm.
And as a patient, you often are the one who gets all the attention, and yet there they are, and being a caregiver, I mean, they are the true heroes of this journey, because so often they're helpless. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how you're feeling. And, it's easy for you to kind of just not take that into account. And so the reason this book is unique, I think, in the market is exactly that. There are perspectives here, where Nagib talks about what it was like to be a caregiver, and Sabrina shares her views, and Shane does his. And I think that that's what makes the book so incredibly powerful.
I agree. Were were you aware of some of the passages that Nagib or the kids wrote, like before? Like when was the first time you were aware of what they were writing? Because some of the stuff they're saying, I thought felt very vulnerable. And I recall one of the passages from Shane, how it was like a sense of guilt he also had because
Yes.
of how much he was working. And like, that is something that is, I thought it was very courageous for him to write. When were you aware of what they were writing, and what was your feeling behind it, reading their work?
Yeah, strangely enough, a lot of what they wrote did actually come as a surprise to me. When I read Shane's passage early on, and just in terms of context, this is when I was in the hospital. I'd been diagnosed with cancer. Shane was working as an investment banker. He was working on a deal, and Nagib kept saying to him, hey, you need to come to the hospital. And he wasn't able to leave. I didn't realize until he wrote that chapter about the incredible guilt that he felt, and it's a guilt that he's carried. And after he wrote that chapter, we've talked about it a number of times.
Wow.
There are other chapters as well, when Sabrina was studying at Columbia, and he would fly to be with me sometimes on chemo day. And when she writes the chapter about, writing a letter to God, I didn't know that until she wrote it, and I read it. And so, yeah, I wish I could say that I was aware through the journey, but it was really through the writing of the book that it became so clear.
Well, that letter to God was, oh my God, oh my God, it was a very, very powerful letter. But that's interesting. See, that takes a lot of trust with your inner circle. I mean, it's a testament to the type of family I think you have, that you're blessed to have. Because I think that's wonderful, and it's also takes, my understanding from reading, just the amount of courage and strength that you take your team has around you. One of the other things, or the other themes that's throughout the book, is the concept of faith, and how you're very open about your faith. And I thought you were very specific about it as well, which I know sometimes people shy away from that. I found it very comforting. That was my personal experience with it. Why did you choose to be that open about your faith and what it meant to you throughout this journey?
My faith was an integral part of me going through this journey. And when I think of faith, more than just the spiritual part of it, to me, faith was daring to throw out the notion that I had absolute control over my life, because I didn't, and I don't think any one of us do. It was really accepting with grace, that God had the master plan, and I may not understand it, but if He's put me, through this, He will see me through it. It was really trusting that there was a purpose to this, and I didn't understand it for the longest time. But when I talk about acceptance and I talk about submission to God's will, it's not passive for me. Acceptance to me it's not about giving up on life, right? Acceptance is about participating in the flow of life, if that makes sense. It's about, being in harmony, and being in that knowing that there is a higher force that you're connected with. And rather than fighting it, it's really around understanding that there is a purpose here. So I would say that my faith has been probably the single most important factor in helping me embrace the cancer, because what you resist persists. But when you accept, it's like this burden is lifted off of your shoulder. That's what it was for me.
I think it's cool, like genuinely, that it's there and so open, and that you are very open about it. Guess what? We have a lot of questions. They are all here. So I'm gonna ask you these questions. Here we go.
Okay.
This one's from Zane Benedita. Here we go. Zane asks, how do you feel now after having written the book and hearing feedback from the readers who are going through the same thing?
One word, I would say humbled, absolutely humbled. I didn't know what the reaction to the book is, because that is so out of your control, right? It's like I birthed the book and then it's out there, and it's been so wonderful. I've had this wonderful community that reads the book with me. So I get text messages and I get phone calls, where people are saying, we're on this chapter, and now we're going to go to sleep, and now I'll pick it up tomorrow. And the feedback has been really incredibly positive. But I think a surprise for me, has been what I did not expect is, as people are reading the book or gifting the book to others, I'm hearing from people that I don't know, people from different parts of the world who are writing to speak with me. So I would say that on a daily basis, I'm speaking to at least 2 people that I don't know, and trying to support them through their journey, and what I do is I just do a lot of listening, and I guess I've been there, and I try and create the safe space for them to express what they're feeling. So that is something that I had not expected that the book would elicit. It's very humbling.
I have a feeling this is just the beginning. Just FYI, it's my feeling. Here's the next question. This one's from Nita Lakani. Can you describe your process for writing the book? Like briefly describe the process for writing the book.
I will, absolutely. And this was Nita, did you say?
Yep, Nita Lakani.
So Nita, the book really started with the blogs, right? And thank goodness I wrote the blogs, because if I had to write the book from scratch, I wouldn't have remembered anything. So the blogs were sort of the starting point. So I took all those blogs and I put them all together. And that was like my first draft. And then I shared my first draft with my family. And I got some pretty brutal feedback. Sabrina said to me, what's not working for me is the blogs, by the time you wrote it, you'd already processed all of the information. So everything is really positive, and you need to dig deep, and you need to find, the pain and the hurt and the anger, and you need to find all of that. Because if you're writing this book, it's got to be authentic, and it's got to be raw, and you got to expose every part of you. And Shane sent me, I don't know, 4 single-sided, pages of feedback on how the book had potential if I did all of these things. And so I quickly got what they were saying. So then I took a full year to rewrite the book and try and bring those pieces together. So I did my piece, and once it was written, it was like, this is kind of nice. This is good. This has potential. This could go somewhere. And then it was MG Vasanji, who is the editor of the book and happens to be a 2-time Giller Prize winner and a pretty tough editor. And he went through every word in that book, and he was pretty brutal in his own way, but it was exactly what was needed, because imagine, having all these different perspectives in the book. How do you keep it together? Like, how do you keep it all together? And so I really credit his work in, what the final product looks like.
Can you share the story that when it was MG Vasanji and Nurjan, they were over at your place, and Nagib, that story of getting Nagib to write a passage and contribute to the book.
Right.
Can you share that story? Because I think that's so great.
Yeah. So MG and Nurjan were over at our place, and the first draft of the book did not have Nagib's perspective. And so MG looks at Nagib, and MG has this way, right? He's very, very much like a professor. And when he speaks, you listen, and he says to Nagib, your voice is not here, and we need your voice to be there. And Nagib says, no, I'm like in the background, and I'm just like not comfortable doing this kind of stuff and like sharing this, with the world. And MG says, no, you need to talk about this. And then MG pressed. He says, it's Saturday, and I want to see a chapter from you by Tuesday. And Nagib was talking to me about this, and he says, I feel like I am a student, and this is like the principal asking me, to write. And, to his credit, he did. And I have to tell you, I am so proud of him, because he had to completely get out of his comfort zone. This is not what he would do. And the chapter that he writes is, F*CK cancer.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I think I have that T-shirt, by the way. I'm not even joking. I think I have that T-shirt.
And I am really proud of him. And the truth is that the book is so much better because of his contribution.
The chapters are, I mean, it's so wonderful to have that perspective, because it makes the read, like it has a wonderful flow to it because of that. And so I think it's a great note that you got from MG to get Nugget on board. Okay, let's go through some more questions. Okay, here's one. This is from Shairoz Hasham. You have also embraced the digital world, from blogs to author to virtual book launches, and now you moved on to podcasting. Can you speak about how this journey has been for you, from going from one thing to another? What's that journey been like for you?
That would be a Shairoz kind of question.
Is it a Shairoz type of question?
Shairoz kind of question. So Shairoz would know that one of my values is learning. When I am learning every day, I am at my happiest. That's my happy point. And so technology has been a struggle for me. It's not something that I know to do very well. And then I thought, I'm not going to waste a COVID. I'm not going to let this time go to waste. So what can I learn from it? And so, the virtual book launches, I thought, I'm going to learn really how to get good at Zoom, and so I'm pretty good at Zoom now. And then it was around Facebook Live. We did a Facebook Live event, about a month ago. And that was our first time. And I'm so proud of that work that we did. And then I thought, you know what? I listen to like 5 or 6 podcasts a day. I'm like a podcast aficionado. So I thought, I can host a podcast, but I didn't have the faintest idea how to do it. So I researched and I took a course on how to do it, and I learned. And I have a podcast now called Choosing Hope, Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. And I think I've got like 7 episodes down.
You're just so remarkable. Like you are a warrior. Genuinely, you are. I'm like, I need to do something with my COVID time. Okay, here's one from, I like this question. This is a nice question. It's from Zora Lakhani. How do you find the strength to lean into your faith when the physical, emotional, and mental pain is relentless?
Zora Lakhani, tough question. It wasn't easy. And I have to tell you that at the beginning of my journey, when I was really sick, I wasn't able to pray. Like I wasn't able to pray. And I remember there was a time when, I was in the hospital a lot. I was admitted a lot. And you know how you have the priests that come around, and I was in intensive care at the time. And I said to him, can I ask you a really crazy question? Faith is really important to me, but right now I can't pray. I've lost that capacity. And he said something to me that brought me a lot of comfort. He said to me, it's okay. That will come. Trust that it will come. Right now, though, allow other people to pray for you. Allow other people to pray for you. You do your piece and it will come over time. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, there were months, where I just couldn't pray. And, different people would send me recordings of stuff. So every once in a while I would listen to recordings to pray. But even that became too much some days. And I just trusted that when it was time, that I would find my way. So over time, it happened, and now it's crazy. Now I've come to a point where holding on to faith is so second nature. It's like I figure if I'm going to trust in God, then why am I going to do the worrying? So I'm just going to kind of, leave it to him. I'll do my part and then I will leave the rest, understanding that he is the master planner, the choreographer, the director, the producer. And I'm just this tiny piece. And I write a chapter in the book called Relax, God's in Charge. And I write more about that in that chapter. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, I'm so like, you're very resilient. And I think you and I talked about that word as well. And you talk about it, that word actually in the book as well, but that's right. What were you like before this? What are you like now? Because I feel like for someone to go through something as unique as 3 cancers, do you need like a baseline of incredible positivity to pull you through? Like what is that?
So
What does it take? Because that is like such a daunting challenge. What does it take?
So I want to address that word that you use, because I have been reflecting on that a lot, and that is resilience, right? I look at our world today with COVID and how we all need to be resilient in order to, go through this time. And so, and I was having a discussion about this with my daughter Sabrina earlier today. And the way that I see resilience is it's a learning experience. You don't read about resilience and become resilient. That's not how resilience works. You have to test it out through challenges. And, I guess I've been lucky enough to have like 3 massive, enormous, gigantic challenges, to try this out on. And, the first time I went through, the cancer diagnosis, it was tough. I wasn't particularly resilient. I was like a confused mass of protoplasm is what I was. I was like not in a good place. And that was true. Like the first time I lost my hair and I lost my eyebrows, it was like not good. I mean, my mom, was shedding a lot of tears. I looked horrible without hair on my head. I looked like an overweight man. I mean, it was not a pleasant thing. But I think I've lost my hair through this process. I think I've lost my hair like 7 times.
Oh my God.
And each time it was just easier. But not only did it become easier, because resilience is like a muscle that you build, right? And now, when I look at our family with resilience, I mean, we are buffed. Because you go through this, and the reality is that you learn. It's a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger you become. But then, with the hair example, for instance, it was not just about losing the hair, but then it was like, oh, I can have fun with this. I can play with this. And at one point I had 12 wigs, and then I thought, oh, I can put a henna design on my head. So it's not just about tolerating it, but it's about taking it to the next level,
Yeah, actually, that is a perfect transition, if you don't mind, to read the next chapter that you have chosen. This thing about, this will make sense about these wigs. If you don't mind just reading this next chapter for all of us, that would
Okay.
be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to give you some context around this chapter. It's called Ending Before You Begin. And what had happened is I'd completed treatment for the lymphoma. And Dr. Tiedemann, my Superman oncologist, says to me, we need to start treatment for myeloma now. And I said, okay. And he said, but I can't put you through that. I think we need to give you a couple of weeks of break. So Naguib tentatively said to Dr. Tiedemann, do you think I might take her to Niagara Falls? Like, is it safe for me to take her on a short trip? And before Tiedemann could answer, I said, Dr. Tiedemann, can Naguib take me to Florida? And you gotta know Dr. Tiedemann, he was processing all of this stuff, going on a flight, this, that, etc. And then he says, yeah, I think you take the proper precaution. Yeah, I think you can go. So that's the context for this chapter.
Okay.
Ending Before You Begin, August 16th, 2012. I'm a huge believer in the philosophy that you must end something before you begin again. Our vacation to Florida gave us just the opportunity for this. It was the midpoint of my cancer treatments. The lymphoma was in remission, and I would be starting treatment for multiple myeloma in 2 weeks. So Florida gave us the occasion to celebrate, to reflect, and to recharge. We stayed at a hotel overlooking the water in St. Pete Beach. We woke up with the sun. We swam, we walked, we talked, we watched beautiful sunsets, and we ate. After months of not being able to enjoy or taste most foods, my appetite had come back with a vengeance. I enjoyed crabs and blackened fish at Krabby Bill's and consumed huge portions of pasta and salad, experimented with Thai and Cuban food, and wolfed down waffles with all sorts of toppings from the Waffle House. I will never take food for granted again. I put on much needed weight, and my stomach was happy with me. I wore different wigs every day. On our last day, I chose not to wear a wig. While we were checking out, the staff at reception started to chuckle, and one of them remarked that finally things were making sense. She explained that every night they thought they were seeing Naguib with a different woman, and therefore they had nicknamed him Casanova. Now, seeing me bald, they realized that there was only one woman, but with different hairstyles. We laughed all the way to the airport, and I teased Naguib mercilessly with his new name, Casanova. We landed back in Toronto on August 1st, and my chemo began the next day. Florida was the perfect place to close part one of this journey, and we welcomed part two with optimism and a sense of moving forward.
I love that. Yes, Casanova. That is great. That is so great. I want to get a couple more questions in before we go. We're running out of time, and that's a shame because there's so many other things I want to mention and talk about. But the book ends with a cruise on the Mediterranean, and it ends in 2017. What has happened since then with you? What is the update?
So a lot of updates. A lot has happened. In June of 2018, my Superman oncologist, Dr. Tiedemann, told us during a routine benign appointment that my myeloma numbers were starting to creep up and that the cancer was beginning to make a comeback. And this was not news that really surprised Naguib and I, because myeloma is not a curable cancer. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we looked at each other, and Naguib and I said, here we go again. And in September of 2018, I started treatment, which was 4 months of chemo. So the chemo was once a week for 4 months. And on November the 22nd, I was scheduled to have my second stem cell transplant. But so much had changed in 6 years since my last transplant. So the first time I had the transplant was when I was in the hospital for, a 3-week period, and under the care of another fabulous doctor, Dr. Norman Franca, one of my favorite doctors. I did the transplant, and this time when I went, there was the option of doing the transplant as an outpatient, because Princess Margaret offered, that option. So before getting the transplant, and this is a technical piece, what happens is there is this high dose melphalan chemo that is given to you. And the purpose of that melphalan is to remove any residual cancer that the 4 months of chemo did not take away. And this is really critical, because when the stem cells are put back into your body, if there is cancer in there, it just doesn't work, right? So imagine what that melphalan does. I mean, if I can have you visualize this with me, it's like if you have a system, a computer, and you do Control-Alt-Delete. That's what it does to your system. And it wipes out your bone marrow. So your bone marrow is the factory where your blood, your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your platelets, are created. Now that's wiped out. So the second day is where you get your stem cell transplant, right? And so I wanted, if you had a moment, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that happened during that time that stand, as memories for me. So while I'm having this melphalan, I've got all these ice chips in my mouth because I needed those ice chips to make sure that high dose chemo does not affect my mouth, right? So I'm like freezing, I'm falling asleep because of the medication that's been given to me. And the phone rings and Nagib says to me, I don't know how to tell you this, but I have great news. And I'm like, oh, you better tell me now, And he says, I just got a phone call from Shane, who lived in Nairobi, and he's coming home to support you and for the transplant. And I said, oh my goodness. And the rest of the melphalan went so easily in my body because that's something to look forward to. And against all odds, the nurses were not happy with me, but I ended up actually going to the airport to pick Shane up, because I wanted to welcome him home. And so he was there, the transplant was done. Sabrina and Afzal were traveling to Kuwait and they joined via FaceTime. And then the other story I wanted to tell is after the stem cell transplant, I got extremely sick and I had to be admitted to the hospital. And when I was admitted to the hospital, I was not in good shape. My blood pressure was low. I had to have multiple transfusions, blood, platelet transfusions. I retained a lot of weight. I was just not in a good place. And Nagib says to me, Muni, you have a visitor. And I said, I am so mad at you. I don't care who the visitor is. I mean, it could be God. It could be the Prime Minister of Canada. I am not interested in seeing anybody. Look at how I look. And in walks Sabrina. She surprised me and came to look after me. And she is the most incredible caregiver because she just knows what to say and how to be with me. And those are the memories I remember from my second transplant. And so that was 7 months ago. I'm here today. Dr. Tiedemann is thrilled with how stable my numbers look. And I'm pretty much living life fully and fearlessly.
Yes, I love that. We're like running out of time, but I just want to say that, see, when you're describing your family, like I feel like, and I've met them and I know them, and I feel like I know them now because of this book. So it's very personal. It's wonderfully written, and it's very intimate. And I thank you for writing this. And congratulations to you and your entire family. I just want to remind everybody, jump on social media, Facebook and Twitter. Munira's handles are Premji Munira and Munira Premji on Instagram. We're giving away some Choosing Hope packages. So please do that. Follow her, follow the journey, grab this book. Munira, thank you very much for allowing me to be your moderator today. This really means a lot. And I'm going to pass it on to Nurjan, the publisher of Mawenzi House, to give some final remarks. Thank you. Is Nurjahan there? Nurjahan? Oh, there we go.
You're muted, Nurjan.
No, I think you're still muted, Nurjan. Should I sneak in another question? No? Okay, fine. Sorry.
There is an unmute button at the bottom.
I think she's having trouble.
Please bear with us. We'll try and fix this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'm getting these messages right now that they're trying to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Sorry
All right.
about that, everyone. Well, anyway, I wanted to thank Munira and Hus for a very engaging discussion. And we are grateful to Toronto Lit Up and Another Story Bookshop for their sponsorship and partnering of tonight's event. Last but not least is the excellent staff. I would like to thank the excellent staff at Mawenzi, Sabrina and Maria. Thank you for all your hard work. And just last thing is copies of Choosing Hope, signed by the author, may be purchased online at anotherstory.ca. Thank you everyone for joining us. It was just a wonderful event, Munira and Hus. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I can jump in, Hus, you know that I love you. You know that I have been a fan and a follower for years. And so when I called you and you immediately said you would do this, it just made everything, it just made everything so much better. So thank you for the work you do. I love working with you. And to everybody that has joined in from around the world, heart is really very, very full, and I send you all big, enormous virtual hugs. And for those of you on the call that I haven't met, I'm putting it out to the universe that I would really like to meet you at a live event. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the book right there. Yeah, yeah. David's got it. I see David's got it. There we go. That's excellent. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.